10 things you should eliminate from your life. Stoicism. Your life is filled with things that drain your energy and hold you back. But have you ever wondered why you keep holding on to them? Sometimes the most powerful act isn't loud or dramatic. It's quietly removing the things that add weight to your life. Toxic relationships, unproductive habits, even outdated beliefs. You don't need permission or anyone's approval for this. In today's video on Stoic in Your Life, I'll show you how Stoic wisdom can help you let go of what you can't control and break free from burdens you no longer need. Life is too short to be stuck in routines that don't serve you, so join me as we uncover 10 things you should eliminate now to create space for peace and purpose. Imagine a fisherman burdened by broken tools and useless nets weighing down his boat in a storm. Only by casting them away could he finally navigate freely. The same goes for our lives. It's only when we release what we don't need that we can move forward. Are you ready to start letting go? Let's dive in. 1. The fear of the opinion of others. One of the heaviest burdens many of us carry through life is the constant, gnawing fear of others' opinions. This fear is subtle, almost invisible, yet it shapes how we think, act, and make decisions. It's like a quiet weight on our shoulders that can gradually steer us away from our true selves. Without realizing it, we may be choosing jobs, relationships, or lifestyles simply because they're approved by society, or because they seem acceptable in the eyes of others. This fear is so powerful that it becomes a barrier between us and the life we genuinely want to lead. Seneca captures this well in his reminder, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." How many dreams have been stifled by the mere thought of what others might think? In many ways, this fear traps us in a perpetual performance like actors on a stage. We play roles, at work, with family, even on social media, curating an image that aligns with what we believe others want to see. And here's the irony. Most people are so wrapped up in their own lives and insecurities that they barely notice ours. Yet, the weight of this invisible audience controls so much of what we do, even if that audience is more imagined than real. We sacrifice so much of ourselves, all for the approval of people who might never give us a second thought. "It never ceases to amaze me," Marcus Aurelius wrote. "We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." The Stoics offer us a liberating perspective here. While we cannot control others' opinions, we can control our response to them. True, this sounds simple in theory, but in practice, it takes immense courage and dedication to choose yourself over the approval of others. To free yourself from this self-imposed prison, you must cultivate the strength to live for your own values, not those imposed by society or the expectations of others. Imagine if each decision you made reflected your own beliefs and desires rather than being a reaction to an invisible crowd. This journey starts with small steps, shedding unnecessary layers of approval-seeking and moving closer to the person you truly want to be. If you've always been interested in a creative project but held back because it's unrealistic or not respectable, give yourself permission to pursue it anyway. Begin by saying no to obligations that don't align with your values, or take a bold step you've been hesitant to make because of the fear of judgment. Each small act of self-authenticity strengthens your ability to live on your terms. Yes, this path is difficult. Some days the weight of judgment may feel unbearable, tempting you to revert to the comfort of societal approval. But this comfort is temporary and costs you a great deal in the long run. Every time you conform, you surrender a little of who you are. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid, advised Epictetus. The point isn't to seek conflict, but to realize that your true self deserves space, even if others don't understand or accept it. With each decision made for your own happiness rather than others' validation, you reclaim a bit more freedom. Imagine a fisherman constantly weighed down by broken nets, rusted tools, and old gear, carrying it all around out of habit, even though it slows him down. In a storm, that extra weight could be dangerous. Only when he lets go of what he no longer needs can he steer freely and safely. This is the same with our lives. Until we learn to let go of the unnecessary weights, such as the expectations of others, we can't truly navigate our own course. As you embark on this journey of letting go, remember it doesn't require an announcement. Just start moving in silence, choosing to value your own opinion over the imagined judgments of others. Trust that your life is valuable enough to be lived on your terms, and that only you know what will bring you fulfillment. Releasing the weight of others' opinions might be uncomfortable, but with each step, you'll find a deeper sense of peace and confidence in yourself. As Carl Jung aptly said, "Freedom begins the moment you stop caring what others think." Let this freedom become the foundation of your decisions, guiding you to a life that's authentically and unapologetically yours. 2. Toxic relationships. Toxic relationships are one of the hardest weights to carry, and often the most difficult to release. Many of us don't realize just how deeply these connections can impact our lives, subtly affecting our energy, our peace, and our sense of self. We've all heard the saying, "None so blind as those who will not see," and it holds true in relationships. Sometimes we cling to people out of loyalty, habit, or fear of being unfair. We overlook red flags, forgive repeated offenses, and invest time and energy in connections that drain rather than uplift us. And before we know it, we've become comfortable with a dynamic that deep down we know is holding us back. These relationships could be romantic, friendships, or even family ties. They may not seem outright harmful, but when you're constantly left feeling drained, anxious, or diminished, it's a sign that this relationship may be taking more than it gives. But here's the thing. You have the power to choose who and what you allow into your life. You aren't obligated to maintain relationships that leave you depleted, and breaking free is often the first step toward regaining your own energy, clarity, and peace of mind. Many of us carry these relationships because we've been conditioned to believe that cutting ties is a sign of weakness or selfishness. We tell ourselves that ending a friendship or limiting time with a family member is a failure, that letting go means we're giving up. But that's simply not true. In fact, choosing to release relationships that don't serve you can be one of the strongest and most self-loving decisions you'll ever make. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control, and you can't control how others behave, but you can choose how you respond. You have every right to prioritize your well-being. Imagine your life as a garden. Some plants bloom and flourish while others drain the soil and take up space. No one forces you to keep a plant that no longer flowers. You can choose to let it go, to free up space for something that will thrive. It's the same with people. You don't need a grand declaration, no need to cut someone off dramatically, or to make announcements to the world. It can be as simple and quiet as no longer watering a plant that's outgrown its place in your garden. But how do you know when a relationship has turned toxic? Think about it. Are there people in your life who leave you feeling drained after every conversation? Do you find yourself anxious or exhausted, as if you've just run an emotional marathon after spending time with them? These aren't necessarily bad people, but their energy doesn't align with yours. Sometimes it's just a clash of personality, values, or even pace of life. But the outcome is the same. You're left depleted. The late-night phone calls that interrupt your rest, the constant negativity that makes you second-guess yourself, the passive comments that chip away at your confidence, each of these interactions is like a small withdrawal from your emotional bank. And while some relationships require a bit of effort, there's a point where the cost outweighs the benefit. Epictetus said it best. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Letting go of a toxic relationship is not about seeking revenge or trying to hurt anyone. It's simply about choosing your own well-being over someone else's expectations or judgments. One powerful way to start this process is by gradually creating space. This doesn't mean ghosting or ignoring people. It's simply about limiting the time and energy you give to relationships that drain you. You can do it without resentment, without anger. Just a quiet, intentional distancing that honors your own needs. Maybe it means saying no more often, declining invitations that don't align with your goals, or slowly shifting your focus to relationships that are reciprocal and positive. Letting go doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. Just as a garden doesn't need an announcement to grow, your life doesn't need a big scene for change to happen. It's a personal, quiet decision to let what no longer serves you fade away. Think of this like clearing out a cluttered room in your home. Every item you remove frees up space and allows for clarity and calm. A toxic relationship is like a piece of clutter, something that takes up space without adding real value. Each time you let go of a relationship that isn't fulfilling, you make room for connections that energize and inspire you. And remember, letting go isn't cruel or cold-hearted. It's an act of self-respect, of honoring the person you are becoming. When you choose not to surround yourself with negativity, you create an environment where you can truly grow. And in doing so, you'll find yourself more open to relationships that bring positivity and joy, ones where you're valued for who you are, not for what you can provide. Many people struggle with this step, feeling guilty or fearful of what others might think. But ask yourself this: what would you do with all the energy you currently spend on relationships that drain you? How would your life change if you surrounded yourself with people who lift you up, support your dreams, and respect your boundaries? This doesn't mean abandoning everyone who frustrates you or expecting perfection from those around you. Rather, it's about recognizing when a relationship has crossed the line from being supportive to being harmful, and knowing that it's okay to prioritize your own mental health and happiness. At the end of the day, some people are like passing wind. They're in your life for a season, and their presence, while meaningful at the time, isn't something you're meant to hold on to forever. The Stoics remind us that life is too precious to waste on things outside our control, and this applies just as much to our relationships. Life is full of ebbs and flows. People come and go, and not every connection is meant to last. Letting go doesn't diminish the memories or experiences you shared. Instead, it allows you to move forward with a clearer sense of who you are and what you need. So take this moment to evaluate your relationships. Think about who truly supports you, who respects your boundaries, and who makes you feel valued. The relationships that do, nurture them, and invest in them fully. And for those that don't, consider whether holding on to them is really worth the cost. This process is deeply personal, but it's also one of the most liberating things you can do. And remember, as Carl Jung wisely said, freedom begins the moment you stop caring what others think. When you let go of toxic relationships, you're not just freeing yourself from negativity. You're creating space for a life filled with purpose, peace, and joy. Choosing to remove toxic relationships from your life is not about being harsh or cutting off people recklessly. It's about preserving your energy, your peace, and building a life where you can flourish alongside people who genuinely care for and respect you. The time you save by releasing these burdens can be reinvested in the people and activities that bring you joy, growth, and fulfillment. You're not obligated to carry everyone with you on your journey. Some people are meant to be lessons, not life partners. Let them go peacefully and focus on what matters most: your well-being, your happiness, and the relationships that genuinely nourish you. 3. Destructive habits. Destructive habits are sneaky. They often start as harmless little behaviors that seem innocent enough. But slowly, over time, they start eating away at our mental and physical well-being, creating cracks in our foundation. You might recognize these habits if you look closely. They're the small things we do without thinking, things that feel routine or comforting, but deep down, we know they're holding us back. I've been there too, falling into these patterns more often than I'd like to admit. Reaching for my phone first thing in the morning, mindlessly scrolling through apps, or pouring that extra cup of coffee I don't really need. These habits feel harmless, yet they're like water dripping on rock, a slow, persistent erosion that over time creates a hole in our sense of peace and purpose. How many of us wake up and before even stretching or greeting the day, we're glued to our screens, immersing ourselves in distractions? It feels small, like it won't matter in the grand scheme of things. But imagine how much of our energy gets drained this way before we've even stepped out of bed. So how do we free ourselves from these destructive routines without making a fuss? First, we have to see them for what they are, and that's the tricky part. It's easy to spot faults in others, but it's harder to recognize our own. And yet, awareness is the first step. The Stoics taught us to look within, to understand and identify the things that don't serve us. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This means noticing when you're about to repeat a habit that doesn't benefit you, pausing, and deciding if you want to proceed or not. For example, the next time you catch yourself reaching for your phone out of habit, stop. Don't throw it across the room, even if that sounds satisfying. Just set it aside and breathe. Take that moment to choose something different, even if it's as simple as stretching or standing up to look out the window. It's not about cutting out every habit at once, it's about planting the seed of change in small, deliberate ways. But destructive habits go beyond just our phones or caffeine. Think of all the little ways we undermine ourselves throughout the day. That extra TV episode that keeps you up late, the gossip that leaves you feeling drained, or the decisions you make on autopilot without really questioning why. Each of these moments is an opportunity to reclaim control, to choose actions that contribute to your well-being rather than erode it. The Stoics were masters of small, quiet discipline, what Epictetus called the silent acts of courage. You don't need to make a grand announcement or tell the world you're quitting this or changing that. True transformation is like a quiet river, persistent and unassuming. Just begin by noticing, by becoming aware of when and why you do the things that don't serve you. This might sound small, but it's the consistent, intentional changes that create lasting transformation. Imagine, if you will, planting a seed. You don't need to check on it every hour, but if you water it and leave it alone, one day it becomes a tree. Changing your habits works in the same way. Each time you resist a destructive habit, each time you choose to act with awareness instead of autopilot, you're nurturing that seed of change. Eventually, without fanfare, you'll find yourself living a different life. And it's a powerful feeling to look back and see how far you've come without needing a massive overhaul. Just small, silent choices repeated over time. Epictetus reminds us, the true transformation does not make a sound, it simply happens. So ask yourself, what small choices can I make today that will strengthen rather than weaken me? Next time you're on your third cup of coffee, or your finger is hovering over the play button for another episode, pause and ask yourself, do I really need this? Sometimes just asking the question is enough to make you reconsider. And remember, eliminating destructive habits doesn't mean becoming a perfect person overnight. We all have our struggles and our quiet battles, but the key lies in our approach. When we chip away at these habits gently, consistently, we begin to polish our lives rather than letting them wear us down. It's a process, one that might not show results immediately, but as time goes on, you'll notice the difference. You'll feel lighter, clearer, more intentional with your energy. The small actions you take now are the foundation of the person you're becoming. So, start today. Look for one habit, just one, that you know isn't adding to your life, and begin to let it go quietly, without making a fuss or big promises. It could be as simple as putting your phone aside first thing in the morning, skipping that third coffee, or choosing to read something nourishing instead of scrolling. And as you make these shifts, remember to celebrate each small victory, because each one is a step toward your best self. At the end of the day, transforming our habits is not about punishing ourselves or stripping away all enjoyment. It's about choosing the things that bring us closer to the life we want to live, one small, conscious decision at a time. Like Marcus Aurelius said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. If you're ready to improve your life, start with the small things you can control. Embrace the silence, the subtle changes, and watch as your life begins to align more closely with your highest intentions. 4. The desire to control everything. The need to control everything can be a relentless and exhausting force in our lives. If you've ever felt like your world will fall apart if you're not on top of every detail, If every outcome isn't precisely what you anticipated, you're not alone. We often convince ourselves that if we meticulously organize every aspect of our lives, if we plan and prevent down to the smallest possibility, everything will flow like a perfectly oiled machine. But life isn't a machine. It's unpredictable, wild, and beautifully chaotic. And yet here we are, so often caught in this mental trap, believing that with just a bit more effort, we can bend the world to our will. This desire for control, while natural, is a bit like running on a treadmill. No matter how fast we go, we're not moving forward, only tiring ourselves out. The irony is, the tighter we try to hold on, the more we seem to lose our balance and feel overwhelmed. This drive to control isn't just a quirk of personality, it becomes a mental prison. Each time we tell ourselves that we can control the outcome, that we can make everything go our way with enough effort, we're building the walls of that prison higher, brick by brick. The ancient Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that the key to peace is not in trying to control everything, but rather in learning to let go of what we cannot control. As Epictetus put it, make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. When we learn to release our grip on the things outside our reach, we find freedom. How often do we spend energy trying to control things that are simply beyond us? We try to influence others' opinions, anticipate their reactions, control outcomes, and plan every possible result. It's like trying to hold back the tide with our hands. It's futile, yet we do it all the time. We grow anxious, frustrated, or even resentful when things don't go as planned, feeling as though life has somehow wronged us. It's a heavy way to live, and yet we all experience it in some form. It's like we're walking through life with a backpack, and each attempt to control the uncontrollable adds another stone to that pack. At first, we hardly notice, but as time goes on, the weight grows until it's nearly unbearable. I remember, not long ago, I used to stress about every small detail in my life. If I had a meeting, I'd mentally prepare for every possible uncomfortable question that might come up. If I planned an outing with friends, I'd worry about whether the venue was right or if something might go wrong. I was constantly preparing for the worst, trying to control the uncontrollable. And do you know what I realized? All that energy, all that worry didn't give me more control. It only fueled my anxiety. Most of the things I worried about never even happened. I was exhausting myself trying to anticipate every scenario, and it was draining my peace. It was only when I started letting go, when I began trusting the process of life, that I felt a weight lift. Things continued to happen, sometimes well, sometimes not. But without that mental strain, I felt freer, lighter. Letting go of control doesn't mean being passive or irresponsible. It's about understanding where your influence begins and ends. It's about realizing that there are parts of life that don't require your constant attention, and that it's okay if things don't always align with your expectations. When we release the need to control, we make space for the unexpected, for surprises, for things outside of our plans. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote that the true control lies in the ability to release the things that are beyond our control. This is a reminder that by accepting the unpredictability of life, we find a profound sense of control within ourselves, the control to choose our response, to accept and to live with resilience. Instead of constantly monitoring and managing every detail, we can choose to focus on what truly matters: our reactions, our actions, and our inner peace. When we stop obsessing over things we can't control, we free ourselves to live fully in the moment, to engage with what's happening rather than what we wish would happen. Next time you find yourself caught up in worry, whether it's about a situation at work, a relationship, or even a simple day-to-day task, ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, release it, not in frustration or defeat, but in peace, knowing that letting go is, in itself, a powerful choice. Each time you let go of something outside your control, you're lifting a stone out of that heavy backpack. Little by little, you'll find that you're no longer weighed down. At its core, learning to release the desire for control is about trusting life. Trust that things can unfold without your constant oversight. Trust that even when events don't go as planned, you have the inner strength to navigate whatever comes. As we journey through life, it's easy to cling to the illusion of control, but true mastery lies in releasing that illusion. When you embrace life as it is, rather than as you want it to be, you'll find a freedom and strength that are unshakable. By all means, prepare, plan, and take action where you can. These are within your power. But beyond that, accept, release, and live with a sense of ease. At the end of the day, letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means making room for what truly matters: peace, presence, and a life that flows without unnecessary tension. If you're ready to embrace a life free from unnecessary burdens, let me know by typing "I let go" in the comments. Your journey to a clearer, lighter mindset starts here. And trust me, there's more wisdom to come, so stay tuned. 5. Unrealistic expectations. Unrealistic expectations are one of the quietest yet most powerful burdens we carry, and they often follow us without us even realizing the weight. I can't tell you how many times I, too, believed that I needed to be perfect. It wasn't that anyone told me this outright, but there it was, always in the air, subtle messages that success meant meeting the silent standards of others, of always doing more, achieving more, and being more. And we start to accept these pressures as part of the journey, believing that if we just keep pushing, if we just keep performing, we'll reach some version of success or happiness. But that's an illusion. Trying to meet these unrealistic expectations is like pouring water into a bucket with holes. No matter how much you give, you never fill it. And in the end, you're left with exhaustion, self-doubt, and frustration. It's like running a race with a backpack full of stones, except each stone is a should that was placed there by someone else. You should be successful by this age. You should always be the best at what you do. You should be the perfect partner, the ideal friend, the exemplary parent. And so we get trapped running through life with this unnecessary weight, only to find ourselves worn down and wondering if we'll ever measure up. But the truth is, most of these expectations aren't even our own. They're built by society, by our upbringing, by family and friends, and even by social media, where we see constant reminders of what we should be or achieve. And without realizing it, we start to live out a script written by everyone but ourselves. Stop and think about it. How many times have you felt like a failure for not achieving something that deep down you didn't even want? It's a strange but common feeling, this sense of disappointment over something that wasn't even yours to begin with. Yet we internalize these outside pressures, and they shape our self-worth. We start to believe that if we're not the best, we're not enough. And here's the painful irony. Those expectations we think we must fulfill don't lead to fulfillment. They lead to anxiety, stress, and feeling perpetually inadequate. This is where the Stoic philosophy brings in a refreshing perspective. Stoics like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius remind us that while we cannot control others' judgments or make life unfold perfectly, we can control our response. And that response can be a choice to lower the expectations that have been dragging us down. Lowering expectations doesn't mean that we're giving up on ourselves or that we're settling for less. Instead, it means we're freeing ourselves from the prison of shoulds and musts that don't truly serve us. It means choosing a life based on values, rather than obligations we feel forced to meet. It's not about saying, "I don't care about anything," but rather, "I choose to care about the things that matter most to me." Now, this isn't something that happens overnight. Letting go of unrealistic expectations is more like cleaning out an old, cluttered closet. Think of it this way. Each expectation you let go of is like discarding a piece of clothing that no longer fits or that you never liked in the first place. You wouldn't hold on to a jacket that's 2 sizes too small or a shirt that you feel uncomfortable in. So why hold on to expectations that make you feel limited or trapped? Start by identifying which expectations don't serve you, especially those that belong to others. Maybe it's the career path you chose because it seemed right, or the goals you set because you thought they'd impress others. Then move on to your own expectations. Ask yourself honestly if they're realistic. Do they leave room for imperfection, for growth, for simply being human? If not, consider easing up. The goal is not to abandon all standards, but to free yourself from the ones that do more harm than good. One simple way to manage expectations is to change your inner dialogue. Rather than saying, "I must succeed at everything," try something like, "I'll do my best with what I have today." It sounds simple, but it's incredibly freeing. It allows you to embrace mistakes as part of the journey and reminds you that growth doesn't require perfection. And here's another valuable trick. Keep your goals to yourself. The more you broadcast your plans, the more expectations others place on you, and those expectations can become even heavier than your own. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." By managing your expectations, by focusing on what's meaningful rather than what's expected, you're choosing thoughts that lead to a richer, lighter, and more genuine life. Letting go of expectations doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're making space for something better. Instead of striving to be everything for everyone, focus on being true to yourself. As you gradually release these unrealistic goals and expectations, you'll start to notice that life becomes less about checking boxes and more about experiencing moments as they come. You'll find that you're no longer carrying the weight of outside opinions, and this freedom allows you to focus on what truly brings you joy and fulfillment. Because at the end of the day, meeting others' expectations won't bring you happiness. It's your own sense of purpose and peace that will. In the end, it's a paradox. The less you expect from yourself and others, the more freedom you gain. It's not about losing ambition or drive. It's about gaining clarity on what really matters. When you strip away the unrealistic expectations, you're left with a life that's truer to who you are and kinder to yourself. So take it step by step. Start by removing just one expectation today. Ask yourself, is this goal serving me, or am I serving this goal? If it doesn't bring you closer to a meaningful life, maybe it's time to let it go. After all, life is too short to live according to standards that aren't our own. Embrace the freedom of lowering the weight of these expectations and find out what happens when you let life flow a little more naturally. In the wise words of Epictetus, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. The less you try to measure up to unrealistic standards, the more you can truly be yourself, and that, my friend, is a gift beyond measure. 6. The need to always be right. The need to always be right, it's a habit, maybe even a compulsion, that many of us carry without realizing it. Have you noticed this in yourself? That drive to win every debate, to have the last word, to prove that you know best? It's like every conversation becomes a quiet battlefield, and your victory lies in proving that your perspective is correct. But here's the catch. This battle isn't really against others, it's against yourself. Every time you insist on having the final say, it's as if you're trying to convince yourself that your worth depends on it. Does that sound exhausting? Because it is. I've been there too, and I can tell you, it's draining. We live in a society that prizes being right, where every slip-up or mistake is seen as a sign of weakness. Social media, family gatherings, work meetings, every arena seems to reinforce the idea that being wrong means failure. But let me share a little secret. Sometimes being right is the least important thing. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control, and they knew that we can't control how others perceive us. Chasing the idea of always being the smartest or the most informed in the room won't bring you closer to inner peace. In fact, it'll only leave you more anxious, frustrated, and, ironically, more isolated. What do you really gain from always being right? A sense of satisfaction? An invisible medal? Picture it like this. Every time you insist on proving your point, you're loading another stone into a suitcase you have to carry. The weight adds up, and eventually, it's unbearable. The effort you pour into each argument, every correction, each attempt to control others' views, it's exhausting because it's endless. Think about it. Is this really the battle you want to keep fighting? The Stoics teach us a better way. Instead of obsessing over being right, learn to let go of that need. Next time you feel the urge to correct someone or assert your view, pause. Not out of defeat, but for the sake of your own peace. Imagine carrying a pen tightly in your hand for hours. After a while, you hardly notice it's there. But when you finally release it, your hand feels a sudden relief you didn't realize you needed. It's the same with the need to be right. The moment you let go, you'll realize that you've freed yourself from a battle you never needed to fight. How do we begin to let go of this habit? First, accept that you don't need to be the one who knows it all. There's nothing wrong with being wrong or even with not having a strong opinion on every subject. You're not in a competition to prove your intelligence. Letting go means shifting your focus from proving yourself to understanding others. Start by really listening, not to refute, but to understand. There's a big difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is passive, but listening requires active effort. And here's the best part. When you truly listen, you start to feel less pressure to correct or dominate the conversation. Another part of letting go is learning to appreciate silence and the value of not always responding. Sometimes the most powerful stance is to let others have the last word. Because in the end, winning an argument doesn't equate to having peace. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it perfectly. True knowledge lies not in winning every battle, but in knowing when not to fight. Think about that. So next time you're in a conversation and feel that familiar urge to correct or argue, take a deep breath. Pause and let it go. Release the pen, so to speak. The calm you'll feel will be worth far more than any short-lived sense of victory. And remember, the Stoics knew that true wisdom is often found not in asserting yourself, but in choosing when to step back. 7. Digital noise. Digital noise surrounds us like never before, infiltrating every aspect of our lives from the moment we wake up to when we finally close our eyes at night. It's no longer just the hum of traffic outside or the neighbor's lawnmower. Now it's a deeper, more invasive noise. It's the constant barrage of notifications, the endless scroll of social media, the ping of every message, update, or email. This digital clutter fills our minds and demands our attention, pulling us in countless directions until we're exhausted, overwhelmed, and disconnected from ourselves. And here's the irony. We think we're the ones controlling our devices, but in truth, more often than not, they're the ones controlling us. In today's world, silence and focus are becoming rare luxuries, yet they're more attainable than we think if we're willing to take control and cut through the noise. We begin to clear this digital clutter and reclaim our peace. The first step is understanding what's really stealing your focus and attention. So much of what fills our screens is unnecessary, yet we absorb it without questioning the cost. Imagine trying to carry around an overloaded backpack. Each unneeded notification, each irrelevant update is like a weight added to that pack. Over time, the weight builds, leaving us mentally drained without us even realizing it. But it's not enough to simply close an app or silence your phone temporarily. That's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs stitches. To break free of this cycle, we need a more radical approach. The Stoics, who valued inner peace above all, knew the importance of guarding one's mental space and staying focused on what truly matters. In a world filled with distractions, they remind us to choose our focus wisely, for true peace doesn't coexist with constant noise. Let's start with one of the biggest culprits, social media. Social media is designed to keep you engaged, often with information that doesn't add any real value to your life. So ask yourself, how many of those accounts, news feeds, or influencers truly enrich you? Do you need to keep up with the daily lives of people you barely know, or check updates on topics that don't bring you joy or growth? Think of your digital world as a cluttered closet. The more unnecessary items you have, the harder it is to find what really matters. Go through your feeds and unfollow or mute anything that isn't serving a positive purpose in your life. It may sound simple, but it's powerful. Like cleaning out a closet, It makes room for what truly fits and enhances your life. Regularly decluttering your social media can bring a surprising sense of relief and clarity, like taking a deep breath after stepping into fresh air. Next, there's the issue of notifications, the interruptions that pop up every few minutes, pulling you away from whatever you're doing. Each notification is like an unwanted tap on the shoulder, breaking your focus and creating mental tension. Why give your phone permission to interrupt you constantly? Disable non-essential notifications. At first, it may feel strange or uncomfortable, as if you're missing out on something important. But soon you'll realize that you're in control. You choose when and how you interact with your phone. Imagine a world where your device works for you, not the other way around. This simple change can bring you a sense of peace that's hard to find when you're at the mercy of constant digital disruptions. With time, you'll notice a renewed ability to focus and a feeling of control that feels refreshing, even liberating. Let's not forget about the fear of missing out, FOMO, the ever-present feeling that if you're not connected, you're being left out of something essential. FOMO has become a modern-day villain, keeping us tethered to our screens with the idea that the next big thing could appear at any moment. But here's the truth. The things that genuinely matter aren't happening on a screen. The moments of true value are happening around you, in the real world, in face-to-face conversations, in the quiet moments that get missed when we're glued to our phones. What are you actually gaining from constantly checking your device? More often than not, it's the experiences we miss, the laughter, the beauty of a sunrise, a loved one's expression, that add depth and joy to our lives. Letting go of the need to stay in the know online allows you to be present, to engage with what's real and lasting, not just what's trending. In freeing yourself from FOMO, you'll find a life that feels more fulfilling and connected. When you start to remove this unnecessary noise from your life, something incredible begins to happen. You start to hear what truly matters, your own thoughts, your priorities, the things that bring you true peace. Silence isn't simply the absence of noise, it's the space for clarity, for being present in the things that matter most. The Stoics believed in focusing only on what we can control, and one of the most powerful ways we can apply that in today's world is by taking control over our digital lives. It's not about completely disconnecting, but about choosing what you allow into your mind. In a world where every app, every notification, every platform is vying for your attention, the choice of where to place your focus becomes a profound act of self-respect. And as Gandhi said, peace doesn't come when the noise stops, but when you decide to listen to yourself. Think about that for a moment. What would your life look like if you didn't feel the constant pull to check, to scroll, to respond? Would you feel more grounded, more connected to the things that actually matter? By choosing to reduce the digital noise, by giving yourself permission to step back, you're not just removing distractions, you're making room for a life that's more intentional, more present, and infinitely more peaceful. This isn't just about decluttering your digital life. It's about reclaiming control over your mind, your energy, and your time. Ultimately, the real luxury today isn't being constantly connected or knowing what's happening every second. The true luxury lies in having the clarity, focus, and peace that comes from deciding where to place your attention. When you stop letting digital chaos dictate your day, you start living a life that's centered on what matters to you. So take control, not because you have to, but because you deserve to experience life without constant digital interruption. Freeing yourself from the grip of digital noise is like lifting a weight you didn't realize you were carrying. It opens up space for creativity, for genuine connection, for the things that make life rich and meaningful. As you let go of the digital distractions, you'll find that your days become less about reacting to the latest notification and more about truly living. In a world overwhelmed with information, choosing peace and presence is an act of wisdom. 8. Negative thoughts. Negative thoughts. They creep into your mind quietly without warning, like uninvited guests who somehow end up staying longer than you'd like. Before you know it, these thoughts settle in, taking charge of your mood and behavior, dictating your actions from the shadows. It's almost as if you've handed them the keys, not because you wanted to, but because they've convinced you that they're simply part of your daily life. But here's a question. What if you could change the locks? What if you could stop these thoughts from becoming a permanent fixture in your mind, shaping your decisions and clouding your days? You see, negative thoughts are like weeds. They start small, but if left unchecked, they can take over, rooting themselves so deeply that it's hard to remember a time when they weren't there. These thoughts, which may sound like, "I'm not good enough" or "nothing ever goes my way," become patterns that we unconsciously repeat. And over time they shape how we see ourselves and the world around us. The Stoics understood this well, and they remind us that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can absolutely control how we respond to it. In the words of Epictetus, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This simple truth is often forgotten, as we let these mental habits dictate our emotions and our actions. Now, changing this pattern isn't a quick fix. It takes time and a quiet, steady approach. The first step is awareness. You don't need to announce to the world that you're trying to rid yourself of negativity. Just start by noticing when these thoughts arise. Recognize them for what they are: visitors, not permanent residents. Don't let them settle in and become part of your self-image. Think of negative thoughts as background noise, like a distant radio playing in another room. You don't have to turn up the volume. Instead, try letting it fade. If a negative thought pops up, acknowledge it, but don't give it more energy. The more you feed these thoughts with your attention, the stronger they grow. It's like swatting at a fly buzzing around you. The more you focus on it, the more it seems to buzz. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply let it be, allowing it to fade away on its own. Another useful approach is to question your thoughts. When a negative thought arises, ask yourself, is this really true? Often, our minds exaggerate. A small setback suddenly feels like a catastrophe, and a single criticism becomes a verdict on our worth. Challenge these thoughts by asking, is it really true that nothing ever goes right? Or, am I truly failing? Or am I just facing a temporary setback? This simple questioning can pull the weight out from under these thoughts, revealing them for what they often are: distortions rather than facts. If there's some truth to a thought, don't let it spiral into self-doubt. Instead, look for solutions. Shifting your focus from the problem to a possible action step can transform your mindset from defeat to resilience. And here's another lesson that the Stoics would have us remember: practice detachment. Your thoughts are not you. Just because a thought enters your mind doesn't mean it's a truth you have to hold on to. Visualize your mind as a vast open sky, and your thoughts as passing clouds. Some days the sky will be bright and clear, other days filled with dark clouds, but the sky itself remains unchanged. Practice watching your thoughts pass by without judgment, without letting them define you. This takes time and patience, but with practice, you'll find that you can separate yourself from the noise of negativity, seeing thoughts as temporary blips rather than permanent truths. Negative thoughts are some of the quietest burdens we carry, but they're also among the most influential, subtly molding how we see ourselves in the world. To eliminate these quietly doesn't mean suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. It means observing, questioning, and allowing them to move on without attaching our identity to them. As Brian Tracy wisely said, thoughts are not facts, but if you believe them, they become your reality. It's a powerful reminder that what we think ultimately shapes what we do and who we become. By practicing awareness, questioning our thoughts, and embracing detachment, we create a mental space that's resilient, calm, and open to growth. At the end of the day, your mind is your own, and you have the power to choose what stays and what goes. 9. Physical and mental disorder. Physical and mental clutter is something we often ignore until it becomes overwhelming, like an invisible weight that pulls us down. Have you ever woken up and felt like everything is just a bit too heavy, a bit too chaotic? You look around and it's not just a feeling. Your surroundings mirror this inner chaos. Maybe your desk is buried under a mountain of papers, clothes are draped over chairs, and random objects are scattered around. It's as if every item out of place adds another layer to the mental fog in your mind, making it harder to focus, to breathe, to even think clearly. There's a connection here that's hard to deny. The state of our physical environment often reflects the state of our minds. And when our spaces are cluttered, our thoughts become cluttered too. The Stoics understood this principle well. They believed in living simply, in focusing on what truly matters, and cutting out what doesn't. After all, clutter, whether it's physical stuff or mental baggage, is the opposite of simplicity and clarity. Each item we don't need, each unhelpful thought we hang on to, is like background noise that disrupts our peace and focus. In today's world where we're constantly bombarded with stuff, information, and endless choices, eliminating what's unnecessary can feel like a profound act of freedom. Think about it. How often do you feel the urge to clean or organize but are overwhelmed by where to even start? Clutter has a sneaky way of taking over, one small pile or task at a time, until you're left feeling stuck and unable to move forward. But here's a trick. It's not about trying to tackle everything in one sweeping motion. Instead, approach it as a quiet, gradual process. Begin by observing your space and asking yourself a simple question. Do I really need all of this? If an item has been sitting unused for months or even years, it's likely not serving you in any meaningful way. Letting go of it doesn't just clear physical space, it also clears mental space. And it's not only about objects. Mental clutter works the same way. Sometimes we hoard old worries, unhelpful thoughts, or even guilt, thinking that somehow holding on to them will make us more prepared or safe. But often, keeping these thoughts is like storing broken items in a drawer, hoping they'll be useful someday. The reality is that this mental clutter only weighs us down, adding layers of unnecessary stress that cloud our minds. Start by letting go, bit by bit, in silence. You don't need to make a big declaration or explain yourself. Just begin the process of release, quietly and intentionally, and you'll start to feel lighter. Letting go of physical clutter can be a first step toward bringing order to your mind. When you begin to put your environment in order, you're creating a space that feels calm, open, and supportive of your well-being. The Stoics often emphasize that inner peace is about focusing on what truly matters, what you can control, and allowing everything else to slip away. Clutter, whether it's a pile of objects or a pile of worries, is a distraction from that peace. It doesn't add anything of value. It just takes up space, both physically and mentally. But this process isn't only about tossing things out. It's about creating clarity and purpose in your life. If you find certain items that no longer serve you, release them. If you notice recurring thoughts that drain you, start practicing detachment from them. Your thoughts are not you. They're simply passing ideas, like clouds drifting across the sky. Just because a thought enters your mind doesn't mean you have to hold on to it. Visualize your mind as a clear open space and your thoughts as passing visitors. Some you'll welcome in, but many can be politely shown the door. This is the essence of mental decluttering, learning to let go of what doesn't serve you so that you have room for what does. And it's not just about things or thoughts. Sometimes it's about the people or commitments that bring unnecessary stress into our lives. If there are relationships that drain you, if there are projects or obligations that no longer bring you joy or growth, consider letting them go. This doesn't mean cutting people off in a harsh way, but simply recognizing when something no longer fits into the life you want to create. In the same way that you can clear your physical space, you can also curate your social and emotional environments. When we simplify our surroundings and relationships, we're making a conscious choice to focus on what really matters, what truly brings us peace. Decluttering isn't an instant fix. It's a process, a journey that you approach with patience and intention. Think of it like cleaning out a drawer. At first, you may hesitate to throw things away. Each item might feel like it has some sentimental or practical value. But as you start to let go of what's no longer necessary, you'll feel a sense of lightness, a release from the burden of holding on to things that don't support your current life. Every item you release, every piece of mental clutter you discard, brings you closer to a simpler, clearer, and more focused way of living. The Stoics believed that happiness and peace come from living in harmony with your values, focusing only on what you can control, and letting everything else go. In a world filled with so much distraction, choosing what to focus on is a powerful act of self-respect and wisdom. Living surrounded by physical and mental clutter is like walking through a maze with no clear path. But as you start to clear away what you don't need, you'll find that the way forward becomes visible. The things that truly matter, the relationships, experiences, and moments that bring joy and purpose, become easier to recognize and appreciate. If you're seeking peace of mind, start by creating peace in your surroundings. This doesn't mean rushing or forcing yourself into a minimalist life overnight. Instead, take small, steady steps. Eliminate the noise, the clutter, the distractions, and watch how your mind begins to open up. Nelson Mandela once said, "When the noise is silenced, the essentials become clearer." This is the heart of decluttering, both physical and mental. In the quiet, you'll find clarity, purpose, and a sense of freedom that no amount of stuff can replace. At the end of the day, this journey isn't just about cleaning or organizing. It's about transforming the way you live, choosing what holds value, and letting go of what doesn't. As you clear away the unnecessary, you're making room for a life that's lighter, more intentional, and deeply aligned with what you truly value. And isn't that what we're all really seeking? You've made it through some powerful steps toward a simpler, more intentional life. Show your dedication by commenting, "I choose freedom." There's a lot more to uncover on this journey, so be sure to subscribe and join us for more insights. 10. Unnecessary comparisons. Unnecessary comparisons. They're like an itch we can't resist scratching, even though we know it doesn't help. Have you ever stopped to wonder why you keep comparing yourself to others? Be honest, we all do it. But what purpose does it really serve? It's like running a race where no one else even knows they're competing, and worse, they probably don't even care. Meanwhile, there you are, in your own head, measuring every step, every stumble, not against your own progress but against someone else's. It's like trying to win a singing contest by mimicking someone else's voice. You have your own unique rhythm, your own story, yet you're constantly trying to follow someone else's script. And in the process, you lose sight of what makes you, you. Comparison is a subtle thief of joy and confidence. It creeps in, and before you know it, you're questioning your worth because you've spent so much time looking sideways instead of forward. Think about it. Each time you measure yourself against someone else's life or achievements, it's like loading a weight onto your shoulders. You wake up one day feeling not good enough, not fast enough, not whatever enough. All because you've been so busy evaluating someone else's success that you've neglected to appreciate your own journey. Life isn't a sprint. It's more like a journey by sea. You set the course, decide the stops, and control the pace. But if you're constantly watching the other boats drifting by, you end up drifting off course. And here's the irony. While you're focused on someone else's boat, they're probably glancing over at yours, doing the exact same thing. It's a strange cycle, isn't it? Everyone looking at everyone else, but few truly enjoying their own journey. Let's start by removing it quietly, without fanfare, just as you might toss out an old piece of clothing. There's no need to announce it to the world. Comparisons don't just take up mental space. They drain energy and undermine your self-worth. Every time you measure yourself against someone else, you're subtly telling yourself you're not enough, that to be valuable, you need to be more like them. But if you really stop to think about it, does that make any sense? The Stoics believed that the only valid comparison is with your past self. Epictetus famously said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." So when you catch that little voice in your head starting to compare, don't silence it outright. That only makes it louder. Instead, question it. And here's the important part. Remind yourself of your own journey and achievements. Reflect on what you've accomplished, no matter how small. It's easy to forget the progress you've made when you're always looking elsewhere. Take a moment to appreciate the path you've walked, the lessons you've learned, and the obstacles you've overcome. You might be surprised at how much you've done and how quickly you've forgotten it all by focusing on someone else's life. Another effective strategy is practicing gratitude. Yes, it may sound simple, but gratitude has a remarkable way of shifting your perspective. When you focus on what you have, rather than what you lack or what others possess, you start to see your life in a new light. Expressing gratitude for your achievements, your growth, and even the challenges you've faced reframes your mindset. Suddenly, the weight of comparison begins to lift, and you realize that the only path worth focusing on is your own. Remember, no one else has walked your exact journey with your unique struggles and victories. Your path is yours alone, and that makes it valuable beyond comparison. The truth is, the habit of comparison won't disappear overnight. It's something you'll need to be mindful of regularly, but with practice, it becomes easier to redirect your focus inward. When you let go of unnecessary comparisons, you're free to experience your own growth, your own progress, without the distortion of someone else's story clouding your view. In the end, it's not about living up to anyone else's standards. It's about becoming the best version of yourself. As Seneca once said, "The greatest wealth is to live content with little." Contentment doesn't come from outpacing others. It comes from embracing your journey and focusing on what truly matters. So, as you move forward, consider releasing the habit of comparison, not with loud declarations, but as a quiet, intentional choice, one that honors your unique path and allows you to fully appreciate the person you are becoming. In the end, life is simply too short to waste in an endless, imaginary race with others. Comparisons only pull you away from what truly matters, living life at your own pace, guided by your own values. When you begin to let go of this need to measure yourself against others, you'll find a sense of freedom and clarity that's truly life-changing. Here's a thought that has helped me through my own journey. When you stop seeing yourself through others' eyes, you uncover who you really are. If you've made it this far, type, "In silence," you'll find the answer in the comments. I'd love to hear your reflections on this journey. And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to Stoic in Your Life. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming videos on Stoicism and personal growth. Thank you for your time and support. It means a lot to us. See you in our next adventure, right here on Stoic in Your Life.